Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. Hello and welcome back to the Parenting 411 podcast. We are your go-to podcast for sharing stories, wisdom, and really a sense of community in this adventure we call parenting. Today, we have a truly special and heartfelt episode for you. In life, we all face moments that test our strength and shake our faith and really the way we see the world. And for parents and families navigating that terrain of grief, it can be one of the most challenging paths to walk. Today, we are joined by someone who has not only walked this path, but has dedicated his life to guiding others through it. Bradley Vinson, also known as the Grieve Coach, is here with us. Bradley's journey is marked by a deep personal experience with loss. He faced the heartbreak of losing his beloved 4-year-old granddaughter, an event that forever changed his life and focus. As a dedicated husband, father of 3, and grandfather, Bradley's personal experiences have fueled his passion for supporting those grappling with grief. With nearly a decade of experience in grief care as a coach, minister, and fire and police chaplain, Bradley brings a wealth of knowledge and compassion. He's not just an engaging speaker and educator, but also an accomplished author on biblical, spiritual, and grief-related subjects. His unique insights extend to the challenges faced by grieving grandparents and men. And he's developed the GRIEVE Method, which is trademarked, and it offers practical steps for navigating the complex journey of grief. In our conversation today, we're going to dive into Bradley's personal story, explore his GRIEVE Method, and discuss how to support children and families through the grieving process. We're also going to touch on societal expectations around grief. A lot of people have opinions about how long you should experience grief, how you should express it. So we're going to talk about that. And Bradley's going to share his invaluable insights and advice for those facing such a tough journey. So whether you're a parent, grandparent, caregiver, or anyone touched by grief, this episode is a beacon of light and understanding of the unspoken world of sorrow and loss. So join me in welcoming Bradley Vinson, the Grieve Coach, to the Parenting 411. Hi, Bradley.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about today. Thank you for having me here.
It's my pleasure to bring someone like you with this wealth of information, because I know that there are families out there who are dealing with grief. I mean, really, none of us gets out of this experience alive without experiencing some sort of loss. So I'm really
Right.
glad that you're here. And I'd love for you to start by just sharing a bit of your personal journey with grief and how it led you to become the Grieve Coach.
Yes. Well, I'd say my grief started with a phone call. I
Mm,
was sitting at my desk one morning and the phone rang and it was my wife. And it was kind of gibberish. And I couldn't really tell what she was saying a lot of. I just remember she said the baby. And then the other line rang and it was from Louisiana, which is where my daughter lived with the kids.
mhm,
So I clicked over and it was the principal at my grandchildren's school. And he
mm,
said, "Is this Bradley Vinson?" I'm like, "Yes, this is he." "Well, I'm the principal at your grandchildren's school, and I'm sorry to inform you, but your granddaughter died today in an accident, and you need to come now."
mm,
That's how it started. And
mm,
so we get to Louisiana and do those things. And I'm in the office with the principal and administrators, and they're consoling us and kind of telling us what's going on. And then the principal looks at me again and he
mm,
says, "Alana's brother, Bryce, which was 6 at the time,
mhm,
doesn't know what happened to his sister. And I
mhm,
think you should tell him."
mm.
And so now I'm given the task of literally starting my grandson's grief journey.
Right.
And, I go into this little room with him and talk to him and let him know his sister's not coming home again.
Mm,
And, and that really started the journey, right? And I'm going through micro traumas because my wife was not my wife, my daughter was estranged from her husband at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm the de facto man now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making the phone calls to everyone and re-traumatizing myself over and over and over, letting them know that my granddaughter's no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm helping do the funeral. I'm doing this, I'm doing, and through all of that, I'm still trying to hold it together. I have this family unit, my wife, my other grandchildren, and all those things. And I'm actually in seminary at the time, right? Studying
Mm-hmm.
how to get closer to God and do ministry. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
struggling.
Sure.
And as I'm looking for resources to help my family and myself heal or get on the healing journey, I couldn't find any, especially for grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And, I come to realize, not by fault of anyone, but when there's a child loss and the further you are away from the birth mother,
Mm.
the less care you get.
Ah, okay.
And I can understand that. That's the birth mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a jealousy thing or anything like that. It was just like, but the resources don't go as far.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
sympathy doesn't go as the care doesn't go as far. It's focused
Mm.
on the mother, then the dad, then the siblings, and then nobody thinks about grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm going through this and trying to find resources, I couldn't find any. So I started just studying and developed my own and started speaking. And churches started asking me to come speak about grief and those type of things. And it kind of grew from there. Because I was in seminary at the time studying. I'm back in school. I'm the same age as the instructors, right? Instead of the
Mm-hmm.
students, I'm at that age. And instead of doing men's ministry and couples ministry, my whole focus changed to grief ministry.
Mm.
And so by the time I graduated that next year, I was fully engaged and fully into serving the grieving community and empowering those people that care for them
Mm-hmm.
and helping them help us
Mm-hmm.
travel this journey better. And so in a nutshell, that's kind of how I got here. It started with my granddaughter, and I can't think of any better way to honor her life for who she was than to be doing this work. She was the type of child at as soon as she could walk, she's in stores and grocery stores with us asking people, "Do you need a hug?"
Oh, wow.
And I would just see grown people melt with this little 2-year-old and 3-year-old hugging them and ministering to them. So I have no other route to go than to honor her life by doing this. So that's what I do.
Wow, and it sounds like she touched people even in her short life. God
Yes.
used her in a very special way. And yeah, I also just want to express my admiration for how you were able to, I mean, you had just found out the news yourself and you were right away moved into the position of the grieve coach almost. I mean,
Yeah.
by first being the one to tell your grandson that his sister
Yeah.
would not be coming home. So that's just really amazing, and I can just imagine how much courage and strength it took for you to do that because it was really before you had even had a chance to process the
Yeah.
grief. And grandparents do matter,
Yeah.
and I'm so glad that you're doing the work that you do because a loss of a child or even an adult,
Yeah.
it does affect more than the nuclear family. By for sure, we've got to support the nuclear family, but especially in every loving family, there's loss. And
Right.
so
Right.
I'm so glad that you're doing the work. And I'm sorry that it's born from this kind of an experience, but I guess that's the way your journey was designed. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that you're walking it. So you created the Grieve Method. Could you share maybe two or three elements that are part of it and how you help parents?
Yeah. I think I'm a avid researcher and reader and things like that. And I
Mm-hmm.
try to help people engage with content as easy as possible. And I think acronyms do that.
Okay.
And that's where the GRIEVE method came from. It's actually an acronym, GRIEVE,
Okay.
for things that people can do on their journey to
Mhm.
help them. It's no particular order, but the order I created was GRIEVE. And the first one is G, grace for those that are not grieving.
Okay.
And as a griever, I think a lot of times we find ourselves in frustration or anger with
Mm.
the world because the world is still moving and
Mm.
our world has stopped.
Right.
And for us to find a place to have grace for those that don't even know we're grieving, have grace for those that are insensitive to our grief, it helps us heal
Mhm.
because I don't want anybody to know or understand what I'm going through. The
Mm.
only way you can truly understand is to have gone through it.
Sure.
And I don't want anyone to have the losses I have. And I have to also remember who I was before my grief.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to work every day. I was going to Walmart. I was going out to Chick-fil-A, and
Mm-hmm.
people had losses all around me, and I'm just living my life,
Right.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
why now can I be angry because other people are on the freeway with me? Or somebody else is in the, how dare you be buying groceries? My granddaughter's dead, right? Because you think that way when you're grieving. It's like, why is the world still moving and
Mm-hmm.
mine's broken?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want to empower and engage grievers to be, we need to have grace for those that are not feeling what we're feeling because it'll
Right.
help us relieve ourselves of some of that and heal.
Mm-hmm.
Or relinquish control,
Mm.
especially when children pass away. The first thing most people look toward is the adults. What did an adult not do? We
Mm.
should be in control. We should have whatever it is, it's like, okay, where were the adults?
Okay.
And we have to realize in this life, we're not in control. It's the false perception of control that brings a lot of our grief and a lot of our guilt. And
Mm.
so releasing control is freeing to the grief process. I'm not in control. I'm going to rely on this. I'm going to lean in and let grief naturally take me towards healing. And
Mm-hmm.
then, you have I invest in your healing. That's
Mm.
time, that's effort, that's in self-care, that's monetary if you need to buy books or go to, counselors or whatever else. You have to invest in your healing. And
Mm-hmm.
then E, express yourself. V, visualize your healing and a better future. And
Mm-hmm.
then E again, engage with others in the
Mm-hmm.
grieving community,
Mm-hmm.
building your support circle. You
Mm-hmm.
have to get out of that cocoon and carry your grief, but you need to engage with people. That's
Mm-hmm.
part of the healing process. And these things kind of intertwine and go in and out as you travel this journey. There's no order, there's no stages. Like these are tools for the journey, and you
Mm-hmm.
pick up that tool as you need it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like it. It's very practical and logical. I really like that. We'll be right back after this. If you're looking to reach a massive audience of parents and caregivers, then look no further than ProPix by the Parenting 411, the ultimate marketing program designed to skyrocket your brand to new heights. With ProPix, we've created 3 incredible packages to suit your marketing needs and budget. So let's take a look. First up is our social starter package. You'll receive a stunning graphic promo piece, plus we'll also feature your brand on the Parenting 411 Instagram page. It's the perfect way to make a memorable first impression and get parents buzzing about your business. Now, if you're ready to level up, our Parenting Pro package is where it's at. You'll enjoy all the benefits of the Social Starter package, plus more awesome benefits, including exposure on the Parenting 411 podcast, which reaches parents in more than 22 countries each week. But wait, there's more. For those seeking the pinnacle of marketing power, our Elite Exposure package is the way to go. You'll get even more exposure across our platform, including thousands of followers and connections on LinkedIn. Get ready to dominate the airwaves and establish yourself as the go-to resource for families everywhere. Take advantage of Pro Picks by the Parenting 411 today and unlock unparalleled marketing opportunities for your business. But I should tell you that prices are set to increase on November 1st, so act now. Pro Picks by the Parenting 411 is your passport to the hearts and minds of parents. Visit ProPicksbyP411.com. Join us today and watch the magic happen. And we're back with the Parenting 411. Now, drawing from your experience working directly with grieving children, being first, your grandchildren, what would you say are some common challenges that they face, and how can parents or caregivers best support them?
Yeah, I think from experience and then from working with other children, a lot of children feel that they don't want to make the adults in their lives more sad because of their grief.
Mm-hmm.
They take on this burden of, well, I don't want to make mommy sad. I don't want to make, I don't want to make my friends sad. I don't want to make the family sad at Thanksgiving because my sister or my brother is not here, or my dad's not here.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things I had to realize as that caregiver is that we have to give our children the opening and opportunity to tell us that we don't have to be their only caregiver.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn that by being so open and having communication with my grandsons. They wanted me to say, well, Paw, I want to be able to talk to someone else about some things because I don't want to make you feel bad.
Right.
Now think about this from children that were 6 and 2 when they came to live with us.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're like 7, 8, the older one, and he was having this conversation with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, Paw, is it okay if I talk to another caring adult? I'm like, yeah, because he didn't want to make me sad. Because at first I was like, well, you don't think Paw can help him?
Right.
But we have to back away from ourselves a little bit so they can heal.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big thing. And I have another acronym that I use that I developed with my grandsons as we're still walking this journey. And it's you have to have the hard but honest conversations with the children. Now be age appropriate. Because I hearken back to that first conversation with my grandson, and I had to put it in terms that a 6-year-old could understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that conversation almost word for word, but he was sitting there on my lap, and I said, sometimes you know how you have an accident, you fall down, and you got to go see mommy for a Band-Aid. I said, sometimes you might fall down and it's a little worse. You might have to go see the doctor. You might have broken a bone. And I said, sometimes we fall down and we have an accident and we have to go see God. And I said, Alana's accident, when she fell down, she has to go see God. And she can't come back from that. And I'm sitting there telling a 6-year-old. And so he understood, but then he said, well, can I hug her again?
Right.
Right. And so we have to be in that position where we have to tell them the hard, honest truth, but be age appropriate so they can understand and walk them through it. And be able to express ourselves, I call it not the boo-hoo slobbing at the mouth crying, you don't want to scare the kids. You do that in your bedroom, in your closet, right? But having emotion, letting them see us cry when they ask, how are you feeling? Well, I'm feeling sad because I miss Alana. That gives them the vocabulary and that gives them the opening to do that. And then I say, lean in, love more, and let them lead sometimes. And what I mean by that, we need to do more hugs, more snuggle time, more this, because their security is been damaged.
Right.
Love more. But that let them lead. My grandson brought that up one day. He's 7, 8 years old, and Alana is actually buried in Texas near us, not in Louisiana.
Okay.
And so we would go to her gravesite, and Bryce, the older brother, he'd walk up. He said, well, Pawpaw, and BB, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, yeah. And he says, well, I don't like going to the gravesite as much as y'all do. He
Okay.
said, but I can't drive. You can't
Mm,
leave me at home by myself, so I just have to go because you guys are going. He said,
mm,
I don't mind going on special occasions, like it's going to be 4th of July, going to be her birthday, and we do different things at the gravesite. He said, but I don't like to go all the time. So
mm,
we had to adjust
mm-hmm.
and go while he's at school or so he doesn't have to go with us. But that's
Sure.
letting them lead.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have that communication, we're not letting the child lead.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they might say, well, can we look at some of Alana's things today? I might not be thinking about that, but they want to look at it. So we'll go get the bin out of the closet with her blankets and her toys, and I'll get the tissue boxes, and we'll sit on the floor and talk and hug blankets but they thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
have to give them that opportunity to do that. So we need to let them lead sometimes and then be patient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As they age, they're going to go back and grieve at that new age.
Right. Right.
So 12-year-old grief is not 6-year-old grief.
Mm-hmm.
6-year-old grief is not 2-year-old grief. And
Mm-hmm.
no matter where we are in our journey, we got to be able to circle back and meet them where they are. Like right
Mm-hmm.
now, the 2-year-old is now 9,
Right.
and he's a little artist. He draws pictures, but now he draws a lot of pictures of
Mm-hmm.
Alana things. So
Oh.
he'll draw a picture of a dog and he'll say Alana, he'll name it Alana's dog or
Mm-hmm.
Alana's friend or whatever.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And he had, he was 2. So
Mm-hmm.
he didn't know Alana had a dog. I don't think Alana had a dog. He didn't know any
Mm-hmm.
of Alana's friends. He was 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's part
Mm-hmm.
of his grieving process and memorializing and remembering his sister. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, her dog might look like that. Or
Mm-hmm.
Alana would like that, or Alana would wear that, or this is the ornament Alana would like.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's bringing raw emotion back from us, but we got to go back and we got to meet him there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is so important. And I think that's kind of how sometimes as adults we miss it because we think that children are resilient,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more so where they are mentally, what they can understand and how they comprehend tough stuff, right?
Right.
Because we explained it as best we could to TJ, which is what he was 2 at the time, when
Sure.
Alana passed, that she was in heaven, she wasn't here, but he was like, okay. But then every time we go back to visit their old house, he's
Mm.
running through the house looking for Alana because
Mm-hmm.
that's the last place he saw her,
Mm-hmm.
and house equals Alana. So
Mm-hmm.
now imagine that. Every time we go back to visit, that's a huge circle back because he's
Right.
like, where's Alana? I
Right.
mean, literally
And
running through the house. Where is she outside? Is she in the kitchen? And it's like, a gut punch every time we went to visit.
mm-hmm.
Until he got over that. I hate to call it maturity. Once he got through that phase of understanding
Right.
that
Right.
not with me meant she was just somewhere else, not that she
Mm-hmm.
was gone, right?
Right.
And so we have to be prepared for those things as the adult caregivers.
Wow. I mean, you have just said so much there. First of all, talking about the importance of meeting the children or the loved one who's grieving where they are, regardless of what you think they ought to be
Right.
able to understand, or regardless of how you process grief, really meeting them where they are. And then something else you talked about that I hadn't really thought about is the way it evolves, like from 2 years old, where you told him, and he's like, okay, because he was understanding as a 2 year old,
Right.
right? And then as he gets older, or, all of the children get older, they miss her in a different way, or they remember something that maybe when they were younger, they hadn't thought much about. And so the grief or the experiencing the loss evolves and becomes something else, and you have to circle back, and at each and every stage the parents and loved ones who care for them have to be okay with that, have to meet them where they are and let them process it. Because that's another thing. I think many people think and actually wish that you get over the grief, and then you're over it and that's it, because that's more comfortable for them, because
Right.
they can't deal with you grieving. It makes them uncomfortable. They love you and all of that, but it's uncomfortable for them to deal with those feelings. So I thought that was a very important point that you definitely brought up. And then it also leads me to a thought that I had that we've had about how society expects you to grieve, and so, and particularly boys and men.
Mm.
And so, talk a bit about that and how you address that in your personal life with your loved ones, as well as the in your business and your counseling when you work with others.
Yes. Usually when I do, I have a talk that I call Men Grieve Too,
Mm.
as in also, right? And I usually start off with a straw poll. I ask the whole audience two questions. Who would you help? What would you do? So
Mm-hmm.
all things being equal, a woman broke down on the side of the road and a man broke down on the side of the road. Which one would you help? To a
Mm-hmm.
person, everyone says the woman.
Ah.
That's okay. Second question. If you broke down on the side of the street, what's the first thing that you do? Almost every woman to a person says, I grab my phone and call somebody.
Okay.
Almost every man to a person says, I get out, walk around the car and see what's wrong. I
Okay.
said, that's men's and women's grief in a nutshell. Because when grief happens, most people flock towards the woman because it's considered a feminine feeling, right?
Okay.
So people flock toward the woman. She's grieving. But then society says, and men say, I'm grieving, but let me try to figure it out first. So
Mm.
society says, he'll be okay. He's a man.
Mm-hmm.
But then the man also says, well, you know what? Let me check this out. Let me go kick the tires. Let me figure out what I can do before I call somebody. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a two-edged sword. It's a little bit of he can do it on his own, and then I feel like I can do it on my own. And so it
Mm-hmm.
makes it worse, right? And so that expectation, it's that false sense of bravado and strength, which
Mm.
goes out the window, honestly, in grief. But we feel we have to do it, you
Mm-hmm.
know, even and I'm not immune to it because even when I went to go care for my daughter and my grandchildren, I jumped into that role. Nobody asked me to start calling people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I just jumped in. He was like, I'm the man. Gotta do it. Okay, everybody sit down. Let me hug some folks. What does everybody need? Let me get y'all some water. I didn't drink any water because they needed water.
Mm.
Right. And what do I need to do to fix this? Instead of what do I need to do to start helping myself get through this?
Mm-hmm.
And so society builds that, we fall into that. But then there's the expectation that, as I said, grief is a feminine emotion. There's
Mm-hmm.
no space for it for men because I've heard men tell me, even at funerals, they'll cry, then a female relative will say, "You're embarrassing me."
Mm.
You know, you gotta be strong
Mm.
because that's a feminine emotion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even with all those things, we're now raising our grandsons. We've been raising them since Alana passed away, and so we're raising two little grieving boys. I'm a grieving man.
Mm.
I'm kind of an introvert. I get energized when I speak and teach, but I'm an introvert by nature.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the strong, quiet type, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna grieve within my emotion, and it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be compounded. So I get quieter in my grief.
Mm-hmm.
But I got two little boys here. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had to realize, No, I need to emote. I need them to see me, going through things. And to be honest with you, my wife
Mm-hmm.
came to me one day and she said, I know you miss Alana. I know you love Alana. But when I can't experience you grieving, it
Mm.
hinders me healing because
Mm.
I know you're not healing
Okay.
because I don't see. And I was like, and I love my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I had to come out of that and emote and show her that I'm going through the process.
Mm-hmm.
So even when the boys will walk up and they'll say, Papa, do you feel sad? Even if I wasn't, I would say yes, because
Mm-hmm.
I know they must be. They want to start that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
are you thinking about Alana? Even if
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, yeah, I'm thinking about Alana. What you thinking about Alana about right now? Well, I miss her. I said, I miss her too.
Mm-hmm.
And we would sit, we would cry, we would talk, we would cry. And
Mm-hmm.
they needed to see that because men naturally emote everything through a sense of grumpiness or anger.
Mm-hmm.
We're scared, we look angry. We're sad, we look angry. We're angry, we look angry, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
frustrated. Everything comes out as the grumpy emotion. And I had
Mm-hmm.
to break that for those
Mm-hmm.
boys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I really lean into it with men and even grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
We're of a generation, the quiet, strong folks, right?
Right.
When you're at that certain age.
Mm-hmm.
And also as a grandparent, you've been through some stuff.
True.
So you're hardened, not in the way of hard shell, impenetrable, but hardened against the storms of life.
Mm-hmm.
So you know grief is coming. You know heartache is coming. You know um, loss of health could be coming.
Mm-hmm.
So you're more resilient. And so when you have these little children going through the most vulnerable part of their life without the person that's supposed to be with them for most of their life,
Mm-hmm.
you have to really strip that off. You got to strip off your resilience and get
Mm-hmm.
raw. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard because it's
Mm-hmm.
out of order grief. They're supposed
Right.
to be burying me. And
Mm-hmm.
both of my parents were still alive when my granddaughter passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have all these layers of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to strip away, get vulnerable, not act, but let the feelings come.
Mm-hmm.
Because love much, grieve much. But
Right.
why hide it? Oh, I'm okay. I'm gonna be no. Grief naturally takes you toward healing. And I tell men all the time, you can't fix enough cars, you can't build enough birdhouses, you can't
Mm-hmm.
play enough golf not to grieve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can't grieve your manhood and your loved one at the same time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
especially when children pass away. There's a sense of our manhood that's been damaged.
Mm-hmm.
Server, provider, protector.
Right.
We failed at something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I can't grieve my manhood and my granddaughter at the same time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And so we have to really work ourselves through that
Yeah.
and tell
Mm-hmm.
society this is my grief.
Right.
I'm gonna cry. I got two little boys that cry. We're loving each other through it. And when the tears come, if you're uncomfortable with that, I'm sorry, but they're gonna come. And
Right.
yeah,
Right. A lot of powerful nuggets there. And a lot of what you talked about in terms of what you've experienced with your grandsons and your wife, that those are very practical tips for parents, other grandparents who are in the position of raising their children, which is an increasingly large number. And are there any additional kinds of things you want to share that maybe hadn't come up in your conversation about um, advice that you'd have for grandparents who are actually raising the
yeah,
grieving children?
yeah. And I tell grandparents this, and it can be kind of other kinship care positions also, but focusing on
Mm-hmm.
grandparents. Everyone has been through trauma.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason those children are in your home is probably due to some trauma.
Mm-hmm.
or some disconnection or some
Right.
separation
Yes.
because they're not with their birth parents.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You have the trauma of having new people in your house,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Because you were empty nesting or whatever else you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things come into play, and now you add the shared trauma of grief. So for us, it was that we were enriching each other's lives because of our common trauma,
Mm-hmm.
but not letting that trauma guide our lives together.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to find ways to bring Alana into how we're living with each other,
Okay.
but also not let that be the thought of that's the only reason we're with each other, if you get
Okay.
what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we live with that empty chair at the dinner table every night,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm looking at two of my grandchildren knowing somebody's missing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to acknowledge that. So
Mm-hmm.
at Christmas, when we go on special vacations or whatever else, we'll say, let's do something you think Alana would like to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or at Christmas time, it's like, well, let's pick out an ornament. Everybody picks out an ornament, and who's gonna pick out the one Alana would like?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, what would Alana say about that?
Mm-hmm.
And so we add her to our lives because she's not missing, she's ever present. But we
Mm-hmm.
don't let the the feelings of her not physically being here guide our lives,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're dealing with this out of order grief for grandparents and the person that should be with them the most of their lives is gone, we also have the mortality because we've skipped the generation
Right.
and we're not going to be here
Mm-hmm.
all their lives.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest things I had to realize is that because grandparents, you call grandkids your second chance to get it right,
Right. Mm-hmm.
um, and you mess them up with candy and stuff and send them back home.
Mm-hmm.
And I grieved the
That.
idea of losing being a grandparent. I'm
Mm.
dad,
Right.
right? So I go to the store, I'm buying bed sheets and pants and toilet paper. I'm not going buying bags of candy and ice cream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I hadn't even
yes,
thought of that.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Paw by name, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
dad by function.
Yes.
So you have to deal with that and work that. And one of the hardest things for me early on was realizing I couldn't lie to my grandsons
Mm-hmm.
because, and I mean that in a way of I can't tell them that bad things won't happen.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell them I'll always be here.
Right.
I can't, the stuff we tell kids to make them feel better when stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
They know bad things happen. Their sister is gone.
Right.
They know that Paw can't protect them from everything because we're in a broken world and things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So those conversations are different. I
Mm-hmm.
have to make sure that I'm not feeding them by fire hydrant all the time. Because in
Mm-hmm.
my mind, the clock is ticking. But they're
Mm-hmm.
still kids. They're still little boys.
Right.
So I have to pull back on all the life lessons and stop bombarding them with, no, we're just going to be in the backyard playing soccer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Skip the life lesson in playing soccer. Just play soccer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even though I know if I don't give it to them, who will?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's all that grandparent stuff that you're dealing with because our time is limited. And I'm the man in their life, and I'm the one that's got to give them how to be a man and show them how I'm loving on their grandma, how they should be loving their wives in the future. I'm all those examples, but
Right.
the example is not forever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I might not be here by the time they both get out of high school. I
Mm-hmm.
can't worry about that, but I worry about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all these things, and I have to keep that part of my grief from them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a shared grief because
Mm-hmm.
they're not expecting to lose Paw.
Mm-hmm.
But our shared grief is Alana not being here. And that's the one I have to let them in on. I can't let them in on the other one because I don't want to add that burden to their lives. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the tightrope we're walking as grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and a lot of grandparents are dealing with that. So yeah, and it's not easy.
That's right. I hadn't
So
even thought about that part of it because goodness knows, um, my son's grandparents, I'm sure they are very different from when they raised in myself and my husband. I can
right,
certainly say that firsthand for my mother. I used to always say, "Who are you? Like, who are you right
right,
now?"
right,
I mean, with the way she uh, they just got away with more than I did. And just the way she spoke to them, I mean, she just loved them to death. And she still had certain standards in terms of their
right,
behavior or things like that. But my goodness. And so I hadn't even thought about that piece
yeah,
of it, that you can't quite be in that role of the spoiling, as they say, or doting grandfather, because you really have to raise these young men and really pour into them from a parent's
yeah,
vantage point and not the grandparent vantage point. Hopefully they're gonna look back and remember and combine the two. But
yeah,
that is something that I hadn't thought of, and I would imagine that a lot of people don't think about that when they see grandparents raising their grandchildren. It's more, oh, thank goodness they were here, and oh, they're okay, and whatever. And they are,
yeah, yeah.
but they don't realize kind of it's more than just putting a roof over their head and making sure they go to school and all that other stuff. It's a lot of emotional, psychological stuff happening there. And, God bless the grandparents that are able to take their grandchildren in after trauma and grief. So, again, it's just, more admiration for what you're doing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We'll be right back after this. Are you a parent looking to unlock your potential in raising confident, capable, and courageous children? Well, look no further. Join us at the upcoming Parent and Purpose Summit Back to School Edition, where parenting experts from around the world will come together to share their wisdom and insights. I'm Carol Maletta, founder of the Parenting 411. This summit is your opportunity to gain essential skills and tools to become the parent you've always aspired to be. Over 5 incredible days, we'll dive deep into topics like positive discipline, effective communication, mental health, self-care, school readiness, and more. An attendee from our last summit told us, "This summit changed my parenting game. I feel more confident and connected with my children than ever before." So secure your seat at the Parent and Purpose Summit today. Visit parentandpurposesummit2023.com. That's Parent and Purpose Summit 2023.com. And click the registration button to join us on this transformative journey. The Parent and Purpose Summit, where intentional parenting begins. And we're back with the Parenting 411. And I would wonder if you could share some advice, because for parents that are supporting their children in dealing with grief and helping them return to regular activities,
Mm.
returning to school after they've experienced a major loss.
Yeah, I would say in those situations that it's awesome for the parent to try to build a circle of support for their child
Mhm.
before they return to those environments.
Okay.
And I remember when the boys first came, we went to the school before they enrolled. And it's like, hey, we need to let you know you're getting two grieving boys in your school.
Okay.
And their sister passed away in May, close to the end of the school year. Her birthday is in September, close to the beginning of the school year. So there can be some times in there where they may look like they're zoned out or whatever else. I need you to be observant of that. We have two grieving boys.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this was their sister's birthday. This was the day they lost their sister.
Mm-hmm.
So those days can be significant. So if there's a hand gesture or a code word they may be to use sometimes when they're feeling a certain way, you say, "Oh, hey Bryce, would you like to take this book to the library for me?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can go to the counselor's office and sit in some quiet time. We need that for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because the
Mm-hmm.
thing about it, I tell parents this. I had asthma, severe asthma as a young boy. And if my mom and dad didn't make my school aware that I had asthma and needed my inhaler, I'd be out. I mean, because I didn't know any better, right? I'd be in
Sure.
gym class or out on the playground and I would have passed out. But the
Sure.
school knew to kind of keep an eye on me. And the teacher
Mm-hmm.
kept my inhaler in her pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So that's no different than a grieving child. We need to
Mm-hmm.
make the school aware that our children are grieving
Right.
and they may need some extra eyeballs on them from time to time. When
Mm-hmm.
it's the daddy-daughter dance, oh, that's
Mm.
little girls. Oh, my son, right?
Sure.
Whatever the thing is, the
Mm-hmm.
mommy-son dance. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm living with BB and Pawpaw, but mommy's not here,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So we have to think about all that stuff. And my children are special to me, so I need you to be aware of that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to send them to school with this dark secret that
Mm-hmm.
nobody should know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's incumbent upon us to help them build that circle of caring adults and
Mm-hmm.
have the school be informed that
Mm-hmm.
your children are grieving. To me,
Mm-hmm.
that's the best way. And their coaches, whoever else,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and so not to make them counselors and stuff like that, but they're just other caring adults. Hey,
Right.
coach so and so. Yeah, yeah, it's my sister. Oh, I know you had a sister. And now that child is in a position
Mm-hmm.
present that, yeah, today's would have been my sister's birthday, but she died when she was. That's not for your child to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Adults should help that be facilitated. Now with their friends and things like that, when they're open to it and they feel they can, they do. And my grandsons have done that.
Okay.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because one of them had a presentation day to talk about the special person in your life, and
Mm.
Bryce wanted to talk about his sister. So he
Okay.
brought some of her stuff to school and did a whole presentation and things like that. Or he would
Mm-hmm.
tell this one little girl, kind didn't really look like Alana, but he would say, "You remind me of my sister." And nobody
Okay.
know Bryce had a sister. The kids didn't know.
Right.
The administration knew. And they were
Sure.
like, "Did Bryce have a?" Yeah, but he had a sister. And so he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk about it. So he talked to his class about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but we have to support that, not make it
Sure.
some secret. Don't tell nobody. They're now embarrassed if they cry about something. No, build that circle of trust, build that circle of support, and send them to school in a way that they can be successful. And so every school that they've matriculated through, we've met with the school first and said, "Hey, you have a grieving boy coming to your school.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing special, nothing that you got to do special for him, but it may be certain times of the year, certain things going on, may have happened at the house or whatever, and you know, but I've let him know that you know, and you're a caring adult that he can talk to."
Mm-hmm. And how have you found the schools and administrators that you've worked with? Have they been receptive? Have they
Yeah.
been accommodating?
Overall, they've been really good. They've been
Good.
open to it. They've been accepting of it.
Mm-hmm.
And as the boy, because they don't, not a lot happens at school. They don't really, other than the little presentations and things like that that Bryce and TJ may have done, but they haven't really utilized the support. I'll say it that way. Really, haven't needed it a lot. But the
Mm-hmm.
awareness of it lets the
Mm-hmm.
teachers know, and just so they're not in left field if they say, "Oh, my sister," or whatever. No, he
Mm-hmm.
had a sister, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was so funny when the boys first came, we were interviewing the school because we
Mm-hmm.
weren't, frankly, we were worried about the diversity at the school and what the school was about. And we're sitting there with the boys and with the principal, and she was like, "Well, oh yeah, how many kids do you have at the house?" And before I could say anything, Bryce said three.
Mm.
And at the time he was seven.
Okay.
And so we all kind of paused. And it's like, yeah, Bryce and TJ, and I said, and they had a sister. you know.
Mhm.
And so we talked through that.
Right.
But
Right.
to Bryce, it was like, no, y'all got three kids at the house.
Right.
She's
Right.
always here, and so
Mm-hmm.
and so we work through that. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we have to it is it's hard. It is what it is. That's the world we're living in. That's the journey we're on. So
Mm-hmm.
let's normalize it as much as possible and build a circle of support beyond just us. And the schools and coaches and tutors, all those people are important to that. It's not embarrassing that they've had a loss. That's part of
Right.
their life. And so we don't want them to feel like they can hide it from their classmates and only tell their close friends. We don't manage that.
Sure.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's not an embarrassing thing that you should avoid. This is
Mm-hmm.
what has happened in your life, and it's
Right.
part of who you are. And so caring adults need to know. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have any closing thoughts of hope or encouragement for parents who might be experiencing this right now and want to know how to help their children
Yeah.
through their grieving process?
I mean, to me, I try to keep things as simple as possible so people can do them and
Okay.
they can be memorized and used. I would really lean into having open, honest conversations with your children at the age level they're at. Start there
Mm-hmm.
and showing your emotion, showing the full spectrum of emotion being normal. It's not abnormal for daddy to cry. It's not abnormal for the boys to cry. It's not abnormal for dad to say, "Can I have an extra hug today?" Or give extra hugs, or let a 8-year-old sit in your lap and watch television and snuggle because they
Mm-hmm.
need that. I would
Mm-hmm.
just say really lean in more and love on them more.
Mm-hmm.
And every hug they want, give it to them. No matter
Mm-hmm.
how annoying it can be at times,
Mm-hmm.
give them every hug they want because their security has been damaged. And
Mm-hmm.
I leave people with this, both adults and even in caring for children, something very simple. I call it the 100-0 rule.
Okay.
You are 100% in control of making others aware of your grief. You are 0% in control of how they respond to your grief. So you have to relieve yourself of the burden of taking on how people feel about your grief and letting that hinder your journey. This
Mm-hmm.
is your grief. Live it out in a healthy way as much as possible and just make people aware that you're grieving. How they respond to that should not be of your concern. This is
Mm-hmm.
your journey. You're
Mm-hmm.
honoring your loved one in a healthy way,
Mm-hmm.
and the grief will naturally take you towards healing.
Mm. Well, I have to say, I mean, definitely our conversation, should make people feel more optimistic. It certainly feels that way for me. That there is a way through it. There's not, it doesn't have to look like other people's, and you decide how you're going to evolve through it.
All
But
right.
I feel like it really is a lifeline for those who are experiencing grief. So, how can people follow you on whether it's at your website or social media?
Yeah. The easiest way is just my website, bradleyvinson.com. I'm on most social media, including YouTube and Facebook as Bradley Vinson. And people can just drop me an email or DM me. I'm always available, always willing to help. Um, if you need some help walking this journey, I'm here to walk with you as long as you'll let me walk with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to our listeners. I really hope that you will share this episode. By all means, of course, like and subscribe to the Parenting 411 podcast. But I really, really want you to share this episode with your friends and family that may not be specifically grieving right now. But I just think that this is a useful conversation to guide you in the future, guide your loved ones in the future. As always, follow the Parenting 411 on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And I encourage you to head on over to bit.ly/fireproof2. That's bit.ly fireproof too. I have a free gift for you that really, there are affirmations and quotes to help you to overcome challenges and just to really feel like you're almost fireproof, like you can come through the fire, come through the crisis on the other side and be victorious. And as always, remember that it's never too late to be the parent you want to be. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.